So welcome to lesson 2.6. We're going to be solving equations using the quadratic formula. So let's just jump right into it. So we're simply just solving this equation, one that we could have in theory done by completing the square, although these numbers would be horrible to do with completing the square. So ultimately moving forward, when equations can't be solved by either taking square roots or factoring, my preference is to use this as opposed to completing the square. So there's the formula. The a, b, and c in here are the coefficients of, well, the two coefficients and the constant, right? So a is 3, b is -4, c is -9 in this example. So you substitute the numbers in, simplify the radical first, essentially. Whatever the radical is, well, you simplify inside first, and then you simplify the radical into simplest radical form. Generally speaking, I know it's something we've talked about when we go over some of those practice questions together when you catch up in the breakout room, like ultimately, I would leave my answer as 2 plus or minus square root of 31 over 3. I'm assuming that when you actually do this in the system, you're going to need to split it out as two separate answers. Even though this statement does represent two separate answers, nonetheless. Okay, let's look at another example. Very similar, and then we will do a couple together. So again, you got the formula, substitute the numbers in, simplify under the radical. This one they did two steps where they took the I out first, and then 27 broke into 9 and 3 to be 3 root 3. So now it's going to be 3i root 3. And then you got the two separate answers there. All right. So there's two to try on your own. So why don't you pause, try them, and then come back and I'll have the answers for you, and we'll talk them out. All right, so let's look at the first one. I write it out a little different than the book described. I only substitute in the first part, which is called the discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac. I figure out what is the number under the radical first. So 6 in for b, 2 in for a, 3 in for c, you end up with 36 minus 24, which is 12. Then I simplify that radical, get 2 root 3. The opposite of b, plus or minus the 2 root 3, all over 4. And then you can take a 2 out of the 6, the 2, and the 4, and you end up with -3 plus or minus 2. So I end up with -3 plus root 3 over 2, and then -3 minus root 3 over 2. I did notice that the book actually might want you to write it out as like -3 halves, and then plus or minus root 3 over 2. All means the same thing. Okay. Now let's look at the second part I did in purple. Oh, I just did that part in purple. I end up with 16 minus 84, which is -68. And then when you simplify square root of -68, I got 2i root 17. The opposite of b is +2. 2a is 6. So I've got 2 plus or minus 2i root 17 over 6. You can divide a 2 out of those, and you end up with 1 plus or minus I root 17 over 3. Again, you could also write that as 1/3 plus or minus I root 17 over 3. All right. Let me know if you have any other questions.